one feeling which sort of always a lot of consultants have कि clients idiot ही होते हैं right? मतलब ये like यार हम बता रहे हैं करना क्या है और कर ही नहीं रहे right?
Working? Test, mic. हाँ ठीक है, perfect. Welcome to Beyond Business Hours, a podcast that is being hosted by Rohan Barua and myself and being powered by Expand My Business. This is a series of podcasts that we have where we bring in visionary entrepreneurs, founders, investors, anyone who kind of adds value to the ecosystem. And we want to understand what a day in their life looks like, get to know them a bit deeper, and have some true candid conversations with them. For today, our guest, I'm very, very happy and very, very proud to invite Mr. Suhail Sameer, our guest on today's show of Beyond Business Hours. So, joining us today, Suhail Sameer, he's a dynamic entrepreneur and an investor. From leading BharatPe to revolutionize financial services for India's merchants to founding OTP Ventures, Suhail has built and scaled transformative businesses across consumer tech, fintech, and FMCG sectors. A former McKinsey associate partner and a young global leader at the World Economic Forum, his track record of success truly speaks for itself. We're thrilled to have Suhail with us to share his insights on leadership, innovation, and the future of India's startup ecosystem. Welcome, Suhail. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. You're being too kind.
No, not at all. I think it's a real pleasure that we have finally got you onto the show. And personally speaking, I have a lot of interested questions that that I've been meaning to ask, and I think there are a lot of people out there who are very interested to know what your take on it is as well. The true reason for why I was so excited to call you here is also because you've kind of been there, done that for a lot of prominent sectors, prominent industries, and I think somebody from the outside world listening to what your take on them is something that is going to be extremely valuable, and that is why I'm very excited, and I'm sure the people who are watching also are going to be learning a lot, from this episode that we're going to be shooting. So really, truly, thank you once again for coming.
My pleasure.
Perfect. So Suhail, to tell you a little bit about Beyond Business Hours. So this podcast is divided into a few segments. We essentially talk a little bit of starting off with the introduction. We have a couple of questions that we've put some interesting acronyms to it for you to get a better understanding and for you to remember them as well. So we're going to be going through these different sections, and of course, keep your answers as candid, as real as possible. And I'm looking forward to a very, very interesting and great conversation that I'm going to be having with you.
Absolutely. Same
Perfect. So starting off with the first part, Suhail, we have our first section, which is obviously just the introduction, where we like to get to know you a little bit better, understand a little bit about how your journey today, you're sitting over here in October, what has got you today till here, and what are the key achievements that you had, just anything that you would like to touch upon. So you've had an incredible journey, Suhail, right? From being born and brought up in Kashmir, moving to different cities, getting that exposure at a very young age, completing your undergraduate from Delhi College of Engineering to pursuing an MBA in IIM. And you've also been a part of McKinsey, BharatPe, RPSG Group, and now you're running OTP Ventures. So really, when I say that you've been there, done that, you really have seen various forms of business and industries. Can you walk us through your journey and what parts of your life were defining for you to reach where you are today?
No, I think the way you put it, it sounds like I've done a lot more than what I think I have. I think I'm simple in so many ways. When we left Kashmir, obviously I was very young, sort of a resetting in a way. And then my dad used to be with SBI, so I was sort of lucky enough to move around as he moved around the world and sort of get exposure at early age. But I think when I was sort of in college, it's very weird. I used to play a lot of sports. I used to do a bunch of things to sort of make extra pocket money, for a lack of a better word. And when I sort of was in B school, you know what I don't think I have ever been sort of very aspirational in terms of what I want to do professionally. I had started with sort of some number. I remember someone who had interviewed me for my first job at McKinsey and said, how do you look back at life? What would be success when you are 40, right? And I had a very naive answer to that, saying, when I want to be 40, I want to have X crore, which was a very sort of small number in hindsight. And then I just want to retire and travel the world, right? So, and I think in a way, I always feel that sort of helped me, right? I think there has been never any agenda of chasing success. There has been never any agenda of sort of chasing money. I have always thought about life in a way that whatever I have is a lot more than what I ever thought I will have. And therefore, if I could imagine living a life with a lot less, this is definitely sort of more than what I can spend, right? So I think the reason I'm sort of spending time on it, I think it is sort of driven me to try new things because I've always felt there is nothing at stake. What if it doesn't work out? Doesn't matter. I'm fine. I have sort of financially covered, and I have hopefully achieved enough to now follow what I really want to do, and that's how sort of all decisions have been, right? So a lot of people feel moved from consulting to building a consumer business to sort of running a fintech to setting up a fund. This must be daunting. It's not, and it is what I feel is the best use of my time at that point of time, and it is what I feel I will enjoy over the next sort of few years of my career, and I've sort of always followed that, and thankfully sort of worked well for me.
I think you're being truly modest when you're saying that, because one thing that you have said commonly in this is, of course, apart from being humble about your achievements, I think the risk-taking appetite is something that you've never been scared about, right? In terms of whatever decision that you've had to take, you've never really kind of thought about, will I reach X crores? Will I reach Y status? Etc., etc. So I think that is something that probably is a very, very important characteristic for you to have achieved where you are. I've seen that common amongst a lot of great individuals that I've spoken to, that risk-taking appetite is extremely strong. Not really, jo hoga so hoga dekh lenge, right? I think that is what truly gets somebody above. You mentioned your father's journey working across SBI, of course, having a lot of exposure at a young age. In your entire career, right? I mean, some big names, some great positions, and really kind of different stages of the entire spectrum of it as well. Was there any kind of one or two defining moments that kind of helped shape it where you are today? Or, the fact that you were working in, let's say, fintech, was your father's position in SBI, in one of the largest banks in India, was that something that was kind of influencing you to, okay, let me get involved someplace in money, let me do something around that, which kind of runs capital markets?
Not really. I used to actually avoid financial services all my life. In fact, in McKinsey, we do a lot of financial services, obviously, as a firm. And I used to always say, my dad works with SBI, so it's a conflict of interest at home. Of course not. But I used to sort of run away from financial services as much as I could. I think BharatPe is obviously a story we'll talk about, and there was sort of bunch of circumstances which led me to sort of run BharatPe. But I think to me, the defining moment of at least my professional career was the 4 odd years I spent with Sanjeev Goenka.
Okay.
I think firstly because I'd been sort of a consultant all my life till then, right? And a lot of consultants have always found it difficult to transition to running businesses, and that was sort of a big thought going on in my mind. And in McKinsey, I used to lead McKinsey's energy practice, right? Very different work. I used to do clean tech, I used to do thermal power, etc., etc. And sort of when I joined Sanjeev, I think the intent was to build a bunch of consumer businesses, right? So, and I remember this conversation very vividly, that when I had with Sanjeev on, like, you should get someone else. I don't think I'm the right person to build these businesses. Sanjeev and I had a long relationship already. He used to be my client, and he basically said, it's fine. I trust you, and sort of I believe you are the right person to build it. Hopefully it will turn out to be true. And he took a big punt on sort of someone who would never build a consumer business to do that. Obviously, in hindsight, it was a great stint, right? We built Tuyam as the first brand to be the fastest brand to 500 crore sales ever in the history of FMCG.
Wow.
Right place, right time. But I think that sort of stint really, to me, unshackled me in a way, right? So basically said, it's okay, nahi aata, we will learn, but if you have the right intent, if you've sort of the right input going in, and if you sort of do clean first principle problem solving, no problem is difficult enough to crack, right? So, and sort of that instinct really allowed me to feel confident about my own ability to add value in situations, my own ability to build a team, because this is also the first time, like, consulting has teams, but these are small teams, right? You work in groups of 3 to 5, 6, 7 at max. First time I was sort of running a team of like 500 odd people. Literally hired everyone, right? I was the first person who joined the business. I still probably know 450 of those 500 names.
Wow.
And sort of, I think that instinct really allowed me to feel very confident of getting into any situation and sort of getting it right with trial and error, sort of with its own learnings going through. And I think that, secondly, I feel also that also unshackled me is because that's the stint where I first time paid off all my loans, I had a bit of spare money, a lot more than what I thought. Started dabbling with investing, and just so lucky that my dearest friend Varun was starting Mama Earth at that time. That was the first check. That also worked out well, of course.
Extremely.
So I think bunch of things started going right, which and we human beings generally thrive on things going right. We're very confidence driven sort of folks, right? And as 2-3 things start going right, you just start of believing a lot more in yourself, right?
Absolutely.
So I think to me, those 4-5 years will always remain sort of core to what I am today.
No, true. I think small wins is a very important part of anyone's journey, whether it's personal, whether it's professional. You're a big sports enthusiast. I myself am a big sports enthusiast, and a lot of people, even in Expand My Business, we're very, very large sport people, right? We chase that winning feeling,
Yeah.
right? And I think what you're saying in terms of when you have 3, 4, 5, be it small wins, it doesn't have to be कि आपने दुनिया change कर दी एक win के साथ, but even if there's small wins along your journey, it inspires and brings up a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
And you truly feel like the world is your oyster. मतलब कुछ भी करो first principle think के साथ, any problem can be solved. It doesn't matter whether it's a tech problem, whether it's a factory problem, manufacturing operation, doesn't matter. First principles will, I truly believe will solve it. I believe Mr. Goenka is, he's a personal mentor of yours as well. I've had the pleasure of watching some of your earlier podcasts, reading some of the things that you have mentioned earlier, and I think 2 stints that you have always mentioned is one is of course at the Goenka Group, and the second one, probably your primary one, would be the most important, at McKinsey, right? I think you've mentioned a lot of good things about that being the foundational step towards where it is that you wanted to be in your career, or the kind of the right catapult for you to kind of get thrown into the right careers phase. I know a lot of different consultants. My own business partner he was a consultant at PwC as well. Had the pleasure of meeting a lot of them. आपको पता ही है VCs में, it's the common kind of DNA, right? Usually an engineering plus a MBA plus a consulting degree, and you're pretty set into a VC firm. Considering that you started something of yourself at the Goenka Group, then of course went on to being an operator role at BharatPe, and now coming back to the business where you're looking at people who can operate things. What was it that actually got you to, become an entrepreneur yourself, right? Was it the operator mindset? Because I remember reading somewhere that because you solved so many problems for clients at McKinsey, you kind of automatically start gearing towards it. यार भाई मैं कितना बोलूँ अब? Let's implement something as well. Was that one of the reasons, or is there something else towards it?
Everyone takes out different things from their consulting journey. I had a great time in McKinsey. One feeling which sort of always a lot of consultants have कि clients idiot ही हो गए, right? मतलब like यार हम बता रहे हैं करना क्या है, कर क्यों नहीं रहे, right? And it's been sort of a constant sort of thought which a lot of consultants go through, right? That it can't be that difficult. We've laid out the strategy, and everyone always goofs up on execution. I always wanted to sort of really test that theory out. Are they idiots or are we idiots, right? So And the only way to test it out is to actually go into an operating role and build something, right? And I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. I think as consultants, it's very easy to see a world as sort of a bunch of decisions which are independent of each other. But that's not what happens when you run sort of a large team. Every decision has implications across the chain, right? And it's actually a lot more difficult to execute than sort of do an answer on paper, right? And to me, I really wanted to see the world from the other side. I'd had sort of great 8 years at McKinsey by then, and I wanted to sort of see if some of the thinking, some of the strategy I've helped build clients, does it really translate through on the other side, right? And I think. And the second sort of thought, which was always, and that's how I became an entrepreneur, I think it was because of lack of options. I was very clear that I don't want to do strategy in a corporate. Strategy karni hai, McKinsey is the best place to do strategy, right? You do it at least for a bunch of sectors, bunch of clients. So I was clear I will not go into a strategy role. No one would have hired me, and for rightly so, to do a operating role. So the only option was to build, right? And and Sanjeev and I had this lovely conversation. I am going to build a few businesses, at least do 0 to 1 on them, and we will see what sticks. Luckily for sort of me, luckily for the group, I think a few of them stuck, right? So, but I was purely treating it as, I think I want to be a CEO one day. If I have to do operations, if I have to execute, then I have to be a CEO. And I don't want to go down that path of being a strategy head and sort of then expanding into business roles and all of that, because to me that was sort of maybe the path which a lot of people take, but a path which would have taken 10 years to get where I eventually got, right? True. So I would rather take the more risky approach of landing in the deep end on day one and hope to survive there. And that's how sort of entrepreneurship sort of came in. And I launched the FMCG business, acquired a couple of companies, launched the fund for Sanjeev, got involved with a few other businesses in the group. And it seemed like everything we were doing together at that time fired, and luckily for us. So that's sort of the start of the journey. But to me, the trigger was I was getting more and more disillusioned by like sort of recommending outcomes and sort of strategy to clients, and realizing it is not translating at all to what we thought it would become on paper, right? In reality, right? And first few years you were like, clients are not really executing it well, but then as I spent more time in the firm, I saw more and more of this. At some point the realization came that it can't be that not everyone is a bad executor. Correct. And and I sort of felt that I need to move to the execution side.
It's a very common point that you're saying, Suhail. I've heard this from a lot of people. The exact same thing that you're saying, that how much will I keep on giving strategy, and ठीक है, मतलब सारे client तो ऐसे हो नहीं सकते कि वो implement नहीं कर सकते. You also interact with the smart people who can afford a McKinsey or any one of these like top 6 big 6 consulting firms. It's not like they can all be bad implementers, right? So I've heard this very commonly, and that is why they actually move into the operator role. That let me finally for myself see कि यार मैं जो 5 strategy बोल रहा हूँ, is any one of them actually going to work, or is it just me who believes कि हाँ मैंने Excel पे डाल दिया, doc पे दिखा दिया और फिर ये लो कर लो काम? Is it just that? But it's a very common thing that you're saying, and
the industries also realize that, right? That's consulting, and that's why even McKinsey, and true for all other consulting firms as well, have started hiring a lot more operators, right? It's great to have a IIT, IIM behind you, but I think people increasingly who've started to do well in consulting firms is a combination of this breed and a combination of operators who've actually seen real businesses, who can sort of preempt what are the challenges in executing this strategy which will happen. Sometimes even existing consultants have started taking operating roles in the companies for a short period of time. But sort of going in and saying, I will get it done. I will be the CEO of the business for the next 6-12 months. And I think that's a great sort of think consulting businesses have realized.
Agreed.
It took probably too long to realize it, but now they're there and they are sort of hiring a lot more operators.
Yeah.
But to me, like, and a bunch of like people like us, for whom McKinsey was the first job, at some point of time, this realization dawned, right? That there must be something wrong with what we are suggesting and recommending versus necessarily just the business is not having execution ability.
No, fair enough. I think very rightly said, and it'll be interesting to see how the next, 5-6 years pan out if we start seeing more operator roles as compared to, people who are giving more theoretical knowledge. I think that'll be really interesting to see, and I think it'll be a very good value add as well from the firm side too. You don't just want somebody who can come and give you gyan. You want somebody who can come and implement it. See the challenges on the ground. Yeah, it's you're saying do this with 200 people who are working on the shop floor. It's easy to say it, and it's a different ball game to kind of get it on the floor. But no, I think that's very interesting. Thank you for a very good insight into your life and how you've got here. Before we move on, the next section, which is called FYI, this is for your inspiration. This is a question that I start off with most people that I meet. I guess it's a bit of a personal question that I'm interested in as well, and it's a question that a lot of people who I interact with are very interested to know about as well. So the question that is that, considering that you've had such a remarkably fast-paced career, myself and a lot of viewers, a lot of people who are going to be watching are very interested to know what does a day look like in the life of Suhail Sameer, right? What do you do in the morning? What does an average day look like? What is it that takes to be who you are today?
I've sort of obviously struggled with it all over my life, and it's gone through a few changes. I think today I'm a very, very late sleeper.
Okay.
Not recommending it to anyone, but I sleep normally at 4 a.m.
Oh, wow.
So I also start my day therefore late. So earliest start for me will be probably 9 a.m. So I'll wake up at 8:30, sleep 4 hours. It's been my constant throughout my life. Again, not recommending it to anyone. It is not because I work hard. This has been true for me since I was like 12 and 13.
Okay.
So I would normally start at 9, get in a 1.5 hour of work, clear the emails, clear everything which is critical. If I have to do some work on my own, sort of get it out of the way. I don't do any external meetings before 11 normally.
Okay.
Very rare, once a week. It's fine, especially if you're like doing calls with the US and all of that. Otherwise, I don't do anything before 11. I usually do sort of 4 physical meetings a day.
Okay.
I've always sort of physical has now, especially in COVID, moved a bit to virtual. But I always like to sort of do 4 meetings a day. 2 of them planned. These will be like sort of monthly, quarterly type things, and 2 of them sort of unplanned. And I've always tried to meet 1 new person a day.
Okay.
It's been sort of. I do actually go back at the end of the week and say if I met 7 new people over 7 days this week or not. And if I didn't, I like sort of try and correct that over a period of time. A lot of basically day just goes in meeting now founders. It's always been a bit of constant, but obviously now I run a fund, it's become sort of a lot more towards that. So I probably do 4 to 5 meetings a day, not more. Normally try and keep 30 minutes between meetings so that you reflect on your thoughts immediately after. Anything you leave for later normally never gets done, at least in my life. I'm not very organized. Normally again keep 6 to 9 free. Usually will try and go for a run or something. I think that's been sort of very constant. I always feel if I'm doing physically something, I feel the energy the next day. Whether it's a run or play a game like paddle and sort of Pickle has made it so easy to find someone to play a game. Very often end up at a dinner with someone.
Okay.
Maybe 2-3 times it's family and friends. Rest of the time it's sort of something social, some founder, some fund manager. I eat out, I think, dinner every day. Like maybe 6 times a week, not every day. And then I again start working at 10. And like my teams have always had this challenge of I will send emails at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. And I realized I was maybe giving an expectation that you have to be
For you to stay up late.
you have to be around all the time. Now my teams know my emails will come at weird times.
Right.
There is no expectation of an answer
Yeah.
for as much as time. I will forget it after sending the email. I think it's my way of just getting things off my plate. And everyone has a very different operating style. I'm just a lot more unorganized. The only constants are, am I doing 3-4 meetings a day? That I ensure. Am I meeting one person new a day? That I ensure. Do I have enough free times in the middle of those meetings to reflect on the conversation and do whatever I need to do? That I ensure. Everything is a lot more fluid for me, right?
Got
So it's not a very exciting day. It's a lot of social stuff, a lot of sort of trying to meet new people. I think that's where I draw my energy from, and that's where I think I learn the most from, right? So I try and ensure sort of that is sacrosanct.
Oh, I think interestingly so, matlab, you're saying you are unorganized, but I believe that there's a very strong method to the madness as well. No, I think you're right. It's like you said, it's a work in progress for everyone. I think it's something that keeps changing over time as well, right? I mean, today you might be this, but maybe 1 year later when I ask this question, you are probably a different person altogether.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe doing your routines early in the morning, sleeping a bit early on time. I think it's like you said, what works for people, and it's a constant work in progress as well. Suhail, so you mentioned that you meet a lot of different new people, and I'm assuming a lot of them would be founders as well, considering that you're running a pretty big fund now, and through OTP Ventures, since you meet these different individuals, has there been any kind of story or any kind of founder that you have met that has told you something extremely inspiring on just day one, or something that you see one of your portfolio companies doing that really inspires you as well, for you to maybe, I don't know, bring it into your life, tell other portfolio founders about it? But have you noticed anything in the group of young founders or founders that you mentor with or that you work with closely?
So, and again, simplification always leads to a bad answer, but I will still sort of try it. I think, to me, like we've in personal capacity invested in sort of probably 80 odd companies, and now as a fund we invest, probably meet 30 to 40 founders at a minimum a month. Actually a lot more, but 30 to 40 founders minimum a month. I think there are a few things I've seen consistently good founders do, and you can only say this in hindsight, right? Because you have to do some level of correlation on basically what they said and if they were successful. I think all the successful founders I have encountered, no matter what their external persona is, right? Everyone wants to keep sort of a particular sort of image. I've seen they are all very headstrong, and I'm using the word sort of very consciously. They're all very headstrong, but at the same time very sort of amenable to feedback. What sort of they're both sort of conflicting words in a way. They have strong convictions, and they sort of will chase everything as if their life depended on it. At the same time, they are also very open to sort of basically saying what I said 15 days back was wrong.
Okay.
Right. So I think it's a combination of learn as quickly as you can, and whatever is your best version of the answer today, fully commit to it. Right. So which is what a lot of people struggle with. Right. So a lot of people take a lot of time to get feedback from the market, from the consumers, from other people they talk to, and they sort of remain stuck in their sort of ideology. Or on the other extreme are sort of so amenable to feedback that they are not really, like, they cause confusion in the organization and to the people they are telling their story. I think it's very important to sort of get your sort of ears close to the ground, listen to the consumers, listen to people. Yet, whatever is your sort of version of the answer today, commit fully to it, and sort of when people see you commit as a founder fully to an answer, the team naturally follows, right?
Agreed.
So and I've seen this, like the best example is Varun at Mama Earth, and I'm sure there are a bunch of other examples I can talk, but that he's also a founder which a lot of people would know and sort of can relate to. Varun and Ghazal started Mama Earth with a very different proposition. It was I don't know if you know this, it was a mother and baby personal care brand.
Yeah, correct.
And of course, today you can argue you can build a large business in that category. I think when these guys were doing roughly 1 crore a month, Varun and I had this chat where he said, this business is not working. And everyone was like, what do you mean by this is not working? Because you've done well, you've got to 1 crore very quickly.
Yeah.
You're getting the next round of funding. And this is also the time in 2014-15 when people used to say DTC can't be built in India. No DTC brand will ever get to 100 crores is the terms we used to sort of hear. And I think Varun's realization at that time was that D2C in children's business is almost impossible to build.
Okay.
Because by the time you acquire a consumer digitally, he's already 2-3 year old. You have 2-3 years left before he becomes not the TG for your product.
Correct.
You need to sell him as much as you can in that period. That period is so small that you will never be able to sell enough that you will recover your customer acquisition cost. It was a very weird thought to a lot of people who were invested in his business. And thankfully, he had Kaval at Fireside, who is one of the best people to sort of on the consumer side. And we said, yeah, it makes sense. And what seemed like a very successful start to a business was pivoted overnight to become sort of a much wider consumer play, which is what you see as sort of Mama Earth and now Honasa sort of see. And this can only happen like when you are sort of listening to consumers and clues, even when the business seems to be on the external side going well. Right? He was going 15% month on month, 10% month on month, and saying that this is not working can only happen if you're sort of listening to the consumers. And throughout, and as soon as sort of he built this conviction, you could see sort of how committed to the next business or the next thought of the business they were, right? And that's what you need in founders, right? Just being quick to absorb feedback, being sort of fully convinced. And that's sort of one trait we normally look for, right? And again, it's very difficult to figure it out in a conversation. Possible maybe to figure it out over a few conversations, possible to maybe figure it out in their historical track record, because this conviction is not necessarily only demonstrated when you're running your own business. This can be even in your sort of past, right?
Agreed.
Have you tried enough different things and have you committed to each one of them and given them best, right? Like McKinsey used to have this model where they used to say, I'm forgetting the term, but basically it was a combination of have you tried enough things in your life
Okay.
and have you been successful at least at a few of them. And that was sort of a shortlisting criteria for this candidates. We want people who have done enough width and have gone deep at least in few areas, because the width basically says you are listening to your social environment and sort of picking up new things very often. And sort of doing well in a couple of them means that you have the execution ability to, like, to whatever you commit, to go really deep and sort of hit it out of the park, right? And that's a trait I see very often in great founders. Once they commit, they will sort of commit with like 120%, and that's what I feel sort of sets really good founders apart from people who have great ideas, but are not sort of committed enough or have second thoughts in their own head sort of while executing.
And I'm assuming by now, since you've experienced it with so many people, I'm assuming at this point of time, you can probably kind of tell in a conversation that you have with any founder as well, right? Is this person kind of truly committed enough to his cause, or are they here for maybe the show? Like, how do you identify this in maybe individuals who are pitching to you for the first time or having regular conversations with you?
If I could do this, then I would sort of leave everything and only invest, which it's tough. I think only time can
Yeah.
prove it.
Agreed.
Of course, you have some starting hypothesis about founders. At least passion for what they are building on day one is visible.
Right.
Will they learn quickly is probably to some extent testable by putting them in different situations. If this doesn't work out, what happens? How do you do this, etc. Will they be able to sort of transition and commit to the next thinking is probably tougher and only
open to feedback at the
and
same
open
time
to
as well.
feedback. I think that only time can sort of really tell. And VC industry is normally given a lot of grief about they only invest in their friends, right? Or their network and all of that. It is reasonably true.
Yeah.
But the reason for that is not necessarily coming from, it's an unconscious bias, and it is coming from when I have seen you over 7 years.
Correct. Yep.
I have a lot better answer today about your ability to do all these things.
100%.
Therefore, it is easier for me to believe you, and therefore it is easier for me to give you money. It doesn't mean you are a better founder than the other person I saw.
Agreed.
It means my own conviction on my own answer that you will do well is higher, right? And therefore that leads to sort of some founders from your network getting preference over someone else, even if that's not the starting intent, right? So, to come back to your question, only time teaches you this. Hopefully, your own experiences sort of allow you to coach founders in a way that they are sort of open to this feedback, right? So,
Agreed. No, I think, and maybe had you asked me the same question 6 years back, my answer was definitely on the more, I would say, pessimistic side of things. That कि यार मैं इनके network पे तो हूँ नहीं, दोस्त नहीं, तो why would I get it? And of course, during the 2016, 17, 18 boom, we also started expand my business sometime towards the end of 2018. Obviously, we're seeing a bunch of different companies, raise large amounts of capital right next to us, and all of them had very similar traits to them, right, in terms of their background. But today, my answer on that is very different. I think, like you're correctly saying, it's at the end of the day, it's always a bet, right? But you're taking a lesser shot in the dark because you know कि हाँ यार बंदे ने 10 साल ऐसे काम किया होगा. This is what his framework of thinking is. This is how he would probably approach a situation. It could be because you've been brought up in the same engineering college or the same, undergraduate college. Maybe your MBAs, postgraduates have taught you a certain way of thinking. And of course, maybe being part of a consulting firm or a very fast-growing, high-growth startup or company. These are just things that we would kind of think of before saying, okay, let me take a bet on him. I'm not saying he's a better founder, but he or she's a better founder. But I have a bet that this person could potentially make it big and could essentially take it. The last question for this segment, and this is more on your operating side of it. You've, for lack of a better word, I would say you've been the CEO or managing director for the past 3 organizations, including even OTP as well, where you're running the show over here. What would have, from an inspiration point of view, what would have been one of the toughest challenges that you would have faced while being CEO, and how did you exactly navigate through that? In terms of managing yourself, managing your company, managing day-to-day operations? How does it look like from an operator point of view when you've come across a difficult situation?
I've had a few, right, as you can imagine. Like even the sort of fiasco at BharatPe from a managing the team point of view and managing regulators. We had sort of a banking license and an NBFC license in the works. Was challenging. I think, to be honest though, these are sort of expected challenges. Maybe not to that extent, but sort of expected challenges. And as a CEO, MD, you need to know that 1 or 2 of these will happen over your life. I think the toughest challenge to actually navigate is not these. The toughest challenges to actually navigate are Uh, Two. One is lack of growth in business. Uh, the second is sort of company culture sort of going to a direction which you are not feeling comfort around. Because that is a reflection of potential lack of growth few months
future.
down the line.
Right.
Right. Uh, I think I have seen most people uh, get their act back together or overcome challenges if the business continues to grow. I mean, like a lot of people tell us how did you guys sort of navigate the BharatPe sort of tough couple of years. It was tough, of course, but 6 months later, at least the internal organization was not focused on it. There were a couple of people who were obviously still doing a bunch of things to clean up everything, and the reason we sort of survived that fiasco was because business continued to grow 10% month on month, even at the scale we were. Uh, if business would have been sort of stagnant, it would have been a much bigger challenge, right? So I think hopefully people don't have to go through what we did, but I think my reflection of all of this is external shocks, external challenges, some misfortune like this, they will all sort of take care of themselves if you just stick your to your guns, as long as the business keeps on growing, right? So I get very, and I'm therefore not maybe a great operator as well. I get very worried the day business is growing at like 1-2% month a month, or like 2 months of degrowth, I will sort of start having panicking, right? And it's maybe the teams don't see it because most of my teams thinks I'm very calm, collected. But I only sort of get worried when business is not growing. And one or two occasions in life where sort of you've gone through those periods of business being stagnant, they've been sort of the toughest times, right? And it's thankfully it's never been a very long phase because we've all sort of come back together, drawing board and saying, what do we do now? But I think those are the challenges I worry about, which keep me awake. Rest of the challenges are fine. They're part of.
I think that's a very refreshing take on it. It's a core problem statement has always be to focus on your business, right? I think rest of the things that come along are just everyday problems.
Yeah.
You have to face them no matter what, whether it's with an iron hand, whether it's with your mentality, could be whatever. But I think the main point is business pe dhyan rakho, kaise aage badhe. I think
It will
that's
come back
the
to
most
why we
important
are
thing.
doing this in the first place.
It'll always come
right?
back to that.
So,
Agreed.
so if you can sort of do the right thing and sort of keep the business going and growing, I think everything else will take care of itself. Some things get forgotten very quickly, something gets forgotten in like a year, right? But the beauty of the world is it has such short-term memory that anything else except for what you built will not be remembered.
True, very true. Thank you for that, Suhail. I think some of those answers were quite refreshing. I was maybe speaking on behalf of my audience as well. Was maybe expecting different types of answers, but what you kind of told just gave me faith back to what it is that we're building, what it is, where our focus needs to be, and what our priorities need to be. So, thank you for that. Moving on to the next section. So this is our section called WTF, which stands for What's the Future? So I've picked two industries over here. These are just quick questions that I have. Some questions that are related to the pure craft of the industry. So I've picked up fintech and D2C, considering that I believe you have the most experience over there. I'm going to ask you a very simple problem statement, one of each, and I would like to know what your thoughts are on them, right? So, as the fintech space is continuously growing at a very, very rapid rate in India, what do you see firstly as the next big challenge to solve for the widespread adoption of, potentially onboarding the next 100 million users onto a kind of a unified digital platform for payments? That is part one. And the part two of it is, we've seen a lot of different fintech companies come across over the last 5-6 years, right? However, I believe that a lot of them are, in terms of making money, the revenue model is that a lot of them are kind of changing the way that maybe lending revenue is being taken upon, or perhaps maybe transactional fees are being, taken as revenue. I've mostly seen models around these two. कोई ऐसे कर रहा है, कोई एक
Yeah.
दूसरे तरीके से कर रहा है. It's mostly that, right? Of course, I'm not saying that there are no companies that are doing it some other way, but most of the companies that I have seen are trying to solve it by this way, and eventually, I think scale is the only answer of where it will actually lead them to or not. So, part one is, what do you think is the next big challenge to onboard, the next 100 million merchants? And second one would be that, do you see any different way or different kind of form of revenue for how these fintech companies are going to come and maybe disrupt the market into what is today already quite a condensed, quite a dense market for the fintech space?
I think last 10 years have laid out all the infrastructure. Obviously, it will keep increasing, the robustness of it will keep increasing, the security of it will keep increasing. But I think what RBI, SEBI, UPI, and sort of bunch of recent innovations on even sort of KYC and etc. Which what they've done is the core infrastructure sort of is now in place. The second thing which a lot of probably fintech founders were not necessarily banking on was payment as a use case. Is a big use case, but it's not a monetizable use case.
Correct. Yeah.
And it makes absolute sense for it to be not monetizable. We used to get a lot of grief as BharatPe when we used to say this. But actually payments will go down to zero. We are talking India, we are not talking US. India cash has been always a major part of the economy. I believe, and again, time will prove if it is right or wrong, the value of making payments digital in India is not only ease for the users, it is sort of tax for the government. Both from, we've seen all types of stuff, right? People do cash transactions and don't avoid GST.
Yeah.
We've seen people underreport income and avoid income tax. The value at stake there for the government in bringing a lot more population in the tax net is lot more than trying to make 0.5% on transaction.
Makes sense.
So from a economy structure, it is, even if government has to subsidize it itself, which is what it is doing in a way, they will always subsidize payments to make everything else go digital as much as it can. So therefore, a lot of businesses which were set up with the premise that transaction is where we will make money have very little hope on making money on transactions. Leave aside sort of some of the cross-border stuff, etc., which has happened. And as people realize that, payments we will not make money, everyone sort of gravitated towards lending.
Correct.
As BharatPe, we were clear this is going to happen. Maybe we had conviction, right, wrong, we don't know. In hindsight, proved right. But we always knew it. So our business was designed in a way that we will always start as lending as monetization. Some of the businesses learned it the hard way and sort of eventually got there. Again, I don't think this is necessarily now true for the next 10 years.
Right.
I think a lot of the lending use cases have been taken up. Most of the banks are now doing UPI, etc. And therefore, these use cases, these lending products, they can also launch. I think over the next 5-10 years, on fintech side specifically, I would believe a lot less lending businesses will be built. There will be still use cases where like no bank is focusing on, no large NBFC is focusing on, and therefore a challenger fintech will come and sort of build that use case.
Right.
But I think the next 10 years where sort of the next set of opportunities will come will be on the investment side.
Investment.
Now we have Grow, Zerodha, etc. enabling transaction,
Right.
but we still don't have enough investment advisors, wealth managers, sort of building products and services for people. Maybe what is the disruption which has happened on the wealth side? Zero. I also believe insurance will go through a massive change. We are so under-penetrated on insurance. Even motor insurance is not fully penetrated, leave aside like more use cases like health and life. You see penetration, it pales in comparison with the rest of the world.
Okay.
Not much has happened. IRDA as a regulator has been historically very conservative, and they are now sort of increasingly becoming open. At least the intent is to sort of become a lot more open. So I think a bunch of sort of stuff will happen on that side. Better products. I have like 10 insurance product ideas in my head which I want someone to build. But I think people have been, and founders have been sort of waiting for a bit more regulatory open stance towards innovation in that side. And I think that's sort of where the bunch of companies will get built. I think cross-border still has massive opportunity. I think the biggest use case of blockchain actually was cross-border transactions. Everyone made it about Bitcoin and trading of Bitcoin and speculative income, but sort of blockchain can enable cross-border transactions at a fraction of a cost than what a typical bank would charge you. And it can not only enable transaction, but it can also enable commerce. Because the big sort of issue also in cross-border payments is security of money is guarantee of delivery of service.
Correct.
And sort of blockchain can sort of solve for that. And sort of, so I think these are the three areas I believe at least a lot of the next gen fintechs will get built. I'm sure I'm missing out a few ideas which I'm blind to.
I think that's quite insightful. I'm myself, I think, picked up on one or two things that I've probably not even thought about or looked at it from that light before. I think adding from a government point of view, what you're saying, I think they're focusing a bit more. They need to focus more on the larger picture, right? It's a lot more value to digitize these guys as compared to making 0.1% or 0.2% in taxes. I think there's more enough room for that. But that's actually an automatic segue to my second part of it when you talk, because the second segment that I've chosen is in the industry of D2C, right? Today we talk about Shark Tank, we talk about the commercialization of maybe being an entrepreneur, right? And a large segment of that falls in D2C founders, people who have been doing something in maybe their small hometowns, etc., and wanting to kind of make it up, right? But where I've personally seen a lot of these guys struggle, of course, keeping the fact that they'll have a good product, okay? But keeping that aside, I think CAC, customer acquisition cost, and I think the logistical trouble, cost, however you want to put it, I think these two things are extremely something that has been kind of restricting a lot of these D2C founders from scaling it or kind of being that big. ठीक है, आप अच्छा profitable business हो सकते हो at a certain scale. 5-10 crore साल का आपने कर दिया, you can kind of, the moment you go one level higher than that, these are the challenges that are going to come ridiculously, right? So do you think that there's a future where these two challenges are maybe going down, or do you think that there's an innovation that is required to, let's say, onboard new customers? You were just talking about, your experiences with Mama Earth and Whole Truth as well. They've, cracked something at some stages, maybe not cracked certain things at some stages, but chalo theek hai, they've kind of been the entire way through, right? So what's your take on this industry and specifically this type of companies that are coming out?
So I think it's not, we put it on D2C, it's not a very dissimilar problem to what conventional FMCG businesses also had. Once you have bunch of brands building same products with like minor differentiation for the same user, customer acquisition cost will always go up.
Yep.
Like I used to sell chips, right? So for 2M. It was very simple. The dukandar used to say, I have Lays, I have Bingo, I have Kurkure. You are the fourth brand. Okay, kam koi baat nahi. Like they give me 8%, you give me 10%. I'm just making up the numbers. Imagine the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th brand coming in the same market.
Yeah.
The only two types of brands will stay. Brands who customer love and brands which are giving the highest margin, which effectively means your CAC is going up, right? Same has played out on D2C, especially in the personal care space, where a lot of this is sort of prevalent, right? CACs have 3x of what they were 3 years back.
Yeah.
Because the number of personal care brands which have got created are like every day there is one personal care brand being
it's
launched.
a very high number.
When Varun launched Mamaearth, there were 5 personal care D2C brands. Today they are probably 50,000 at the minimum. So the natural implication of that is CAC will go up. It doesn't mean you don't build in that. You can still have a great product and that will win. I still believe personal care will create bunch of unicorns over the next few years. As an investor, it has become tougher to spot them because it is no longer you do your good execution, you're there.
Yeah, correct.
As a founder, unless you have really unique insight and a really unique product, it's tougher to sort of build it. But if you sort of now step away from it and say, CAC has not universally gone up. CAC has only gone up for personal care brands, maybe to some extent for food brands. As per capita increases and people's disposable income increases, the first thing they spend on is how I look. Yeah, because that's visible to the full world. So, beauty, personal care, clothes to a certain extent were the first things which got spent on. As you have a bit more money, you will spend on how I feel, which is where food, health, maybe to some extent sort of experiences came into. The next transition of that will be things which are closer to home but not always visible, and which is what we are, for example, seeing on luggage. Right? Luggage is now going through that transition, like 7-8 brands have come in. The next transition of that will be inside your home. I'm 100% sure over the next 10 years you will see a Dyson built out of India, a Smeg built out of India, a La Creuset built out of India.
Yeah.
All this money, where will it go, right? You can only spend that much. In fact, clothes is one category which, very interestingly, Varun and I were chatting, Mamaearth, Varun and I were chatting 3-4 days back, is a category which is now de-premierizing.
Okay.
Everywhere you see premierization, people are saying, who cares about what I wear? As long as it's not torn, as long as it's not, it's white t-shirt is a white t-shirt. It needs to look good.
Yeah.
White t-shirt is a white t-shirt. ये 20 बार चलेगी, ये 50 बार चलेगी, कोई बात नहीं, 2 खरीद लेगी. And that's why you see, for example, Trent and sort of
Trent, your Zudio.
is basically saying, I am going to give you Zara at 1/5 the price of Zara.
Yeah.
And people are lapping it up because apparel is actually going through de-premiumization because people don't care as much about sort of this any longer. I think D2C will go through this transition of sort of getting more disposable income, spend on things which matter, spend sort of coming closer to the home. The last thing which will get tackled is the bedroom because no one enters your bedroom. But I think now the next wave will sort of happen where stuff comes into your home and brands will build great products which will be like international quality at potentially flips into 1.5 times pricing.
Wonderful.
Brands will build beautiful products which are maybe not as high functionality at a Philips minus 0.2% pricing, right? And that's where sort of the transition is going to go on. If you are obviously all chasing with the same consumer with the same story, your CAC is going to go up, right? Yeah. So, thankfully, distribution innovation keeps happening and these CACs keep resetting.
Yeah.
And quick commerce is doing that right now, right?
Yeah.
Which is basically saying, what is e-commerce? We don't care. We are going to be bigger than all of e-commerce on QC. Only maybe, I don't know, 1 year out, 1.5 year out, 2 year out. And that is sort of enabling a lot of new brands who will take first position there to sort of... so every time there is a distribution reset, CACs go down and they will start then gradually going up, right? So as a brand, your job is to figure out, do I have a differentiated enough product or I am building in a category where by design CAC is low?
I think the reality actually lies in that these are probably challenges that you just cannot escape. It will go up and down for sure, but I think there are more innovative ways to tackle it. Be it maybe looking at the right industry. I think a very, very insightful answer you've given in terms of how you see the next 10 years of D2C kind of the more specific SKUs that are coming about it. But yeah, I think it's a challenge. It's a reality that will eventually keep on slapping you. It's just about how you kind of make do with it and turn around and run the business through and through, right? Very interesting.
And
Very
that's why I think
interesting.
businesses have also started realizing that they need to go omni-channel sooner.
Yes.
Because you don't know which channel will be the most efficient
Yeah.
to reach out to the consumer.
Agreed.
And you don't want to be stuck with only one channel. It's great to start with only one channel to get to a minimum scale, because then you
Yes.
can focus all your energies in getting it right.
Correct.
But like Mama Earth went offline when they were probably doing 30-40 crores a month.
Wow.
Probably maybe slightly
But it was
more.
a good move to go offline at that point of time.
Yeah.
Not early.
Today, brands are saying, I'm at 10 crores a month, I need to
go
think offline.
Yeah.
Some brands are saying, I need to start offline because that's where I'm going to spend my energy
Makes
on.
sense, yeah.
I was speaking to a lovely founder who's going to do something in hair care, and he's saying, I am going to be only offline launch. And then the products which work for me are the ones I'm going to take online.
Right.
Because when someone is searching for your specific product, your online CAC is much lower,
Much
right?
better as
So,
well, yeah.
so I think people will start going omni-channel much faster and then sort of play around with these
What
go-to-market
to do
approaches to see what works best for them.
No, makes sense. I think I've seen personally interact with quite a few different founders who have actually thought that way as well. I remember we were having a chat with Mr. Piyush Bansal. He's also a portfolio company of Chirate, our common investor. So he was also saying the same thing of when they actually went offline. They were earlier planning on doing everything, online. They अब जितना भी लेके आपका वो क्लास का टेक्नोलॉजी लेके आ गए हैं, सारा कुछ आपने लेके ट्राइंग फीलिंग लुक वुक सब कुछ आपने लेके, बट आई थिंक व्हाट somebody was telling me that I think offline is actually doing wonders for them as compared to online. And I think, but again, it's a transition that you have to choose. You become a lot more aware about what to do at what point of time. But nee, thank you so much. That's a really, really well, some answers to actually think about, and I will definitely go back and see what it is and evaluate even our clients a bit differently, because we've worked on quite a few different e-commerce, quick commerce, B2C type companies who come in to expand my business, and the kind of business model that they're building, keeping your insight in mind, probably would change the way that I look at these businesses and how I can sell them better as well. So moving on to the next segment, which is titled BYOB, which is short for Build Your Own Business. So here are a couple of questions that we have. In case you were, let's say, put into the same shoes again of starting business from scratch, what were some things that you would want to advise to similar people at that stage? Any kind of tips and tricks that you could, tell from your experience that you feel would help them out, build their business out as well. So, you've led large organizations, you've been an early stage investor, and of course, you've met a lot of different founders that you've worked across as well. Is there any kind of common mistake that you have seen founders do while trying to scale up their business? Something that you would say that here is one thing that just absolutely do not do, or it's a common mistake that a lot of people make and should not be doing? Is there anything that you have noticed particularly?
I think a few. Your co-founder?
Nishant.
That's the no, not your co-founder, but your co-founder in the business in general. Your co-founder is lovely, but I think business building is a long journey.
Yeah.
You're like at the shortest, probably looking at a 10-year sort of thing to do with someone. It is as important as sort of your partner. I think a lot of people quickly jump the gun on who they are starting out with. Sometimes it plays out on the business and sort of you fall away and sort of business suffers. Even if it doesn't, it plays out on your mind, right? Like you don't want to be a co-founder where you're sort of always constantly not feeling happy sort of working together. I think that's sort of something I would rather start alone and figure out team in a way which is sort of hopefully better than me and sort of elevate them over a period of time versus just for the sake of having a co-founder start with someone I don't blindly trust or I don't trust as much as me. It's not having a clone, it's having someone you have deep trust and respect for, right? And you think is as good as you, if not better, who you can sort of leave your decisions and know that he will do sort of as well as you and will always have your and business interest at the core of what they decide. I think this second sort of is around capital raise. A lot of time people don't think through, do they need capital or not? and again, a lot of people tell me, "Oh, I propagate bootstrapping." I'm not propagating bootstrapping. I'm saying you need to think what you are building, and is it a very large business or not? If it is not, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means you to think through your capital structure a lot more. If you are going and pitching an idea to Sequoia, unless it can become a $1 billion company, they will always feel bad about funding your business. And it will always lead to pressure on you to grow. Even though what you are building may be a really beautiful business if done more slowly and more thoughtfully, right? So, do you want to raise capital? Is the business going to be big enough after you raise capital? Are you trying to build a $1 billion company, a $100 million company, or a small business which is profitable always? Whether you take capital and what kind of capital you take, and at what valuation you take it at, all changes based on this. And I've seen businesses make a bunch of these mistakes. I'm trying to build a small company. Like people who are trying to build companies which they always want to keep private, they also go to investors and say, because as if it's fashion to raise money, right? So I think just getting that wrong puts so much stress on the business as well as on you as founders. And it is also unfair to the funds who you've raised from, because they would have very clearly said what their return expectations are at the time of investing. If you are never aligned to that in the first place, just to say it to get the funding sort of across the line is long-term pain for short-term benefit, right? I think, and the only good businesses I have seen sort of die, especially in consumer brands, are businesses which have promised the moon, raised at very different valuations. Very nice businesses growing, etc. But when the market sort of switches and becomes tighter, are not able to justify previous sort of valuations, right? So therefore, who do you raise from? How much you raise? What valuation you raise? Do you even raise or not? Is something which I have seen a bunch of founders, even sometimes really good founders, get wrong.
Okay.
And sort of even like chasing valuations for that point of view when the market is like great. Like I at least know like 3 fastest unicorns which beat each other's record. And I'm not sure any one of those companies are like, and I'm very sort of bullish and hopeful for them to do well.
Yeah.
But today it doesn't seem like they are great businesses at all. Because people focused on valuation and money raising versus focusing on actually building a business. So I think, and it only hurts the founder, by the way. Most VCs will say, great guys will build something or the other. And we always have liquidation preference on our capital. We have only given 100 million. As long as the company sells at 100 million, at least our money is safe. No matter what the paper valuation may be, right? So paper valuation can only hurt the founders and the founding teams and the business. Investors, possibly, but not always. As long as the company even sells at 1/3, 1/4 of the valuation, investors normally will get all their money back, right? So, so I think that's the second thing which I've seen go wrong very often. And the third thing I have seen go wrong very often is mistaken product market fit. India is a population of like 140 crore people. मेरी ऐप डाउनलोड हो रही है is not product market fit, right? मतलब FMCG में I'm getting sales is not product market fit because like a lot of this is trials. In an app-based product, are you able to monetize where your customer recovery of whatever you are spending to acquire him is happening in less than 1 year? Is the product market fit? In the beginning, you can argue, in the beginning, I will always struggle because I don't have repeats and all of that. So therefore, 2 years also recovery is fine. But are you seeing signs of 2 year and is it going to become 1 year? I'm selling something for free and therefore I'm getting downloads is not sort of sign of any product market fit. Similarly, in FMCG businesses, D2C businesses, am I getting repeat sales, and are those repeat sales enough to cover for my customer acquisition cost? Is product market fit. And I've realized a lot of people getting false sense of comfort on product market fit by leading indicators, which can be a proxy for sort of eventually sales and sort of profits catching up, but are not always the case, right? So app download is not. App downloads is not any sign of product market fit. Are X% of people paying at least half of what I eventually want to charge them? And today I'm maybe okay not charging them the full amount because the product is also building. But if I get half, then I get some sort of sense of a product market fit, right? So I think wrong founding team, raising money from the wrong sources and at valuations which don't justify, and declaring sort of initial victory on product market fit too soon, I think are the three sort of reasons I have seen sort of businesses struggle. Obviously, these are early stage challenges. Once you become slightly bigger, there are different challenges, right? So maybe the product market fit is good, but the market is only that deep, right? So, but that you will sort of figure, and once you are at a slightly later stage as a business, you have also a lot more degrees of freedom. You have a lot more time as well, right? So to get these things right.
Correct. I think what you're saying is absolutely spot on in terms of short-term gains, long-term losses. I think that's something that you've been quite vocal about in the past as well, right? That it's a marathon at the end of the day. It's not a sprint, right?
Yeah.
So how do you advise young founders who are, let's say, building companies, or not just young founders, but let's say first-time founders, first-time entrepreneurs? How do you kind of instill this in their head that it's a marathon, not a sprint, and for them to better manage, let's say, burnouts, or for them to be able to think more clearly, to have that kind of freedom of thought that you're saying, and not kind of all the time be involved in firefighting, hustling, or whatever it is that a daily schedule kind of takes the load out of you. So what do you advise for those guys?
It's very tough to tell a founder how to run his company. I think most of them listen. They are, of course, lovely people.
Yeah.
It's obviously difficult to execute, right? A founder always worries most about his company, a lot more than an investor would, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think you can really tell a founder to take it easy. You can't tell him it's a marathon. He will listen, but he will just ignore it as soon as he's out of the room. I think our job sort of as investors is to help prioritize and say one thing at a time. These two things seem most critical to me. I have seen this play out. Let's solve for them, and then let's come to the next. The second thing as an investor you can do is to basically take some load off the founder. When you feel that the founder knows what needs to get done, like give him some space, let him execute. Like half the founders I tell, like, I don't need any MIS except for the MIS which you anyway make to track your own business.
Right.
I don't want every month you spending one day of your month in creating a MIS which I want to see, and then spending 3 hours on a call to explain me that MIS, and this is a MIS you are never anyway using in your business, right? So how do you sort of take out these inefficiencies from a founder's life, and sort of so that he focuses on, help him figure out these are the three things to focus on, and give him sort of the breadth to sort of focus on them. And the third thing which I think a lot of funds do well is help you connect to people who can help you solve your problem. I think the VC ecosystem in general does that well. Like your performance marketing issue, here are 5 companies who can help you with. These are the tools we've seen personally. These are the 3 we've heard great things about. These are the 4 founders who use them. Go talk to them. I think I've seen sort of venture ecosystem generally do that well. I think the only 2 things I would love to sort of the ecosystem to do better, and which is to help the founder prioritize and sort of stop wasting his time and his team's time in things which are not relevant to anyone except for you.
Agreed. I think that's very, very important, and probably a big reason for why maybe a young person, if anybody comes my way, of course, I would recommend them to working with
thank
OTP, because I think that's something that gets taken for granted when you have that kind of relationship with that investor. It's the moment you start looking at them as a part of your company and not someone who you are preparing things to kind of report to them, I think the entire dynamic changes, because the way that we also involve our board at the moment, we tell them, come into our leadership meetings, come into our review meetings. It's not all horses and unicorns and rainbows where whatever we're sending you वो ही अच्छे सच्चे में हो रहा है, आप आ जाओ, घुसो, आप भी समझो क्या प्रॉब्लम आते हैं बिजनेस के अंदर. And it brings out that level of, I think, compassionate and that level of understanding, which is very, very important, because again, coming back to the same point that you're saying, it's a marathon and it's a very long journey that you have to spend together, and these are points that just kind of help build in that trust. So I really do appreciate you saying that from a founder point of view, of course, that that's how you operate, and I'm sure that'll just do wonders with the kind of relationships that you have with your portfolio companies as well. So one of our new segments, an interesting segment, moving on to that, it's called Trick or Tech, right? So this is where I'm going to be telling you 3 different statements, and in these statements, 2 of them are trick and 1 of them is actual, where technology is being used, right? Being a tech-first company, being a world that is moving very fastly towards a digital adoption of most things that we see around ourselves, we want to kind of keep this portion of it as kind of new age technology as much as possible. So I'll be telling you 3 statements, and you can feel free to tell me which one you believe are the trick part of it and which one is actually being done through technology. So the first statement, AI-powered refrigerators can now predict what you'll want to eat next week by scanning your facial expressions. That is one. The second, there is a new AI that can write full-length monetary code in 10 minutes. And the third, AI is now being used to detect early signs in mental health disorders by analyzing a person's voice.
Wow, they seem all true.
They seem all true?
They seem all true. I've sort of got so scared of AI what all it can do. They just seem all true.
Just for disclaimer for everyone watching as well, this is as of the first week of October. So the way that it's moving, AI is evolving. It's very much possible that some of them that are trick could be accomplished literally as quickly as maybe the next week or the next month. So, but yeah, I agree with. Which one do you think is which 2 do you think are trick, and which one do you actually think is being done?
You'll have to repeat the statements.
So one
unless your sheet has an answer, I can look at that one.
I mean, I do have the answer.
Oh, you have the answer.
But I'll quickly tell you, AI-powered refrigerators predicting what you will want to eat next week depending on your facial expression. That is the first. Second one is there's a new AI that can write full-length novelty code in 10 minutes. And the third is AI is now being used to detect early signs of mental health disorder just by analyzing a person's voice.
See, first and third can definitely be done. It may or may not be accurate. I think novelty code, I don't think the AI has evolved yet enough to sort of not pick up something which is done from before. So I would assume that. But at the rate AI is sort of improving, I don't think that day is far.
Fair enough. So the true statement was actually AI is now being used to detect early signs in mental health disorders by analyzing a person's voice.
Oh, there is only one true.
There was only one true.
I thought you said there are 2 true.
Two trick statements.
Oh, 2
and one
trick statements. The third one is of course true.
The third one is
assume
the true
first one will also be true. AI can see your face and say next week you should be eating.
Maybe next
You're
week
getting depressed. Maybe you should be eating your favorite mutton curry next week.
Maybe. In fact, interestingly enough, I was reading recently that what kind of swipes that you do on your phone, the way you type, the way that you tap the buttons, that also is, I was reading a research paper that was analyzing that and basically predicting what the phone would be doing in terms of feature wise or whatever. वो तो आप बहुत चीज़ analyze कर सकते हो, but it's something that is coming up very new in the industry. Statement 2. So this is around technology and sleeping, right? So same statement here, 2 tricks and 1 tech, which is the truth, right?
Okay.
So first one, sleep tracking applications can now use AI to analyze your dreams based on your movement and breathing patterns. Second, smart mattresses can now use AI to automatically adjust firmness based on your sleeping position. And the third, There are wearable devices that can tell you how many calories you burned during sleep by analyzing your brainwaves.
You think this is not all true? You repeat now the three statements again, slowly.
Sleep tracking apps that
Yeah.
can use AI to analyze your dreams based on movement and breathing patterns. That is first. Smart mattresses using AI to adjust firmness depending on your sleeping position. And the third, wearable devices that can tell you how many calories you burn during sleep by analyzing brainwaves.
I think the second one is true.
Correct. The second one is true. The first and third are probably currently under maybe being built, but as of right now, they are two. Both of them are tricks. So very good in that one. And the last part, the last statement of this section, this is around self-driving cars. So self-driving cars can now predict traffic patterns and avoid accidents based solely on social media reports from nearby drivers. That's one. Second, AI in self-driving cars can adjust the vehicle's speed and driving style based on the passenger's heart rate and anxiety levels. And the third, the latest self-driving car systems can recognize and avoid potholes by analyzing the road texture in real time. Would you like me to repeat them?
No, the third one is true.
Third one is true? Yeah, correct. The third one is true. The first two are trick at the moment. And absolutely, the latest self-driving car systems, they can do this. We've seen this in our cars such as Tesla and BYDs.
Yeah.
Of course, Tesla not so much in India, but I think I've seen it personally over in BYDs and when I was driving in a Tesla in the UAE region particularly right now.
Yeah.
But very interesting to see where it is going through and the kind of different measurements and regulations that they're bringing across
Yeah.
for self-autonomous driving. If not, keep your steering hand off the wheel and driving it. So the last section, this is a very quick rapid fire round that we take. I'm going to ask you a series of multiple choice questions, just two options, 2 or 3 options, and you'll have to just give me quick answers of what you believe is what is coming to your head and what you would want to stick with, right?
Fair.
So starting quickly with our rapid fire, fintech or D2C or emerging tech, if you had to choose one.
D2C.
D2C. Okay. Building from scratch or scaling an existing business?
Building from scratch.
Okay. McKinsey strategy sessions or boardroom decisions as a CEO?
None of them. But second one.
Okay. Tech first or people first?
People first.
Mentoring founders or leading teams?
Mentoring founders.
Okay. Cricket or tennis?
Tough one. Tennis.
Okay, wonderful. So, Suhail, that brings us to the last segment of our podcast. Thank you so much for taking out the time, for
pleasure.
coming and really, really giving us so much of your, insights and different ways that how you look at situations and talk about a lot about your life journey as well. Personally, I have learned a lot. I'm sure people watching, sure people who are even going to be listening into this are people who are going to be really getting to hear some genuine good piece of advice and potentially help them to grow as well. So thank you so much for taking out the time. Is there any last words that you would like to tell to the people watching or just how your experience has been on the podcast before we wrap things up?
No, first of all, my pleasure to be here. Really good session. I had a lot of fun. I think the only last thing sort of to your audiences is I think we get carried away on a lot of sort of what is hot at the moment, right? Entrepreneurship was hot at some point of time. Fundraising is hot at some point of time. I think there is no reason to be an entrepreneur unless you're feeling the need to solve something. Great job with sort of good work life, good money can be also a great outcome. I think my only request to people who have sort of who would want to listen to is to follow what your heart says and follow your passion, right? So, and everyone's passion doesn't have to be at work, right? So, if you want to sort of spend your time skiing and that's the passion, sort of do that. And to spend as much time on that may mean being a founder is not the right answer for you, and that's perfectly legit, right? So eventually everyone can only optimize for a few things, and what are those things everyone needs to sort of get to first before sort of jumping on what is hot at the moment, right? So you want to be a founder, reach out to one of us and hopefully we can help you. But if that's not the path, and that's a perfectly legitimate choice, and sort of take take that choice and follow sort of what your heart desires.
100%. And I think, like you're correctly saying, this is for professionals. This is for people who are looking to grow. It doesn't always have to be in a stage of becoming a company, starting up, raising capital. It's always about people just wanting to professionally grow. So next time I do meet any young founders, anybody, I will definitely, of course, keep on recommending them to you as well. Thank you so much for being a guest on Beyond Business Hours. I hope you had a wonderful time, and we look forward to again meeting you very soon. And thank you for tuning in, and catch you next week. Thank you so much.